Today we are working on this 2013 Chevy Malibu, and we are looking at the ignition system, and here's our wire diagram. These are our ignition coils. As you can see, those solid black wires, they are the ground of the ignition coil, and those pink and blue, they are the voltage supply of the ignition coil, and those black and blue wires, they are the ignition coil control return, the low rev. And those unique colors of each ignition coil, those unique color wires, they are ignition coil control wire, and they are connected to the ECN here. Down here, you're connect to the ECN down here.
On the 2013 Malibu, we will be testing the resistance of our connectors, not of our connectors, of our ignition coils. And you can see pins 1 and 4 on these connectors. So you can see from the description, 1 is ground and 4 is our fuse. So starting on cylinder 1, go ahead and put our pins on 1 and 4. Get a reading of 405.8 kilo ohms. Then on to number 2. We get 433 kilo ohms. Cylinder number 3. We have 377. And finally, cylinder 4. We have 432. Yeah. On cylinder 3, you can see that the 377 was much lower than the rest of the coils that we have. And as you can see in line 4, so each cylinder will have its own ignition coil. We are plugged into cylinders 1 and 4 currently. In 4, we are on the ignition control pin. And on cylinder 1, we are on the ignition control low reference, or the feedback pin. So on the Pico, this is what it looks like. So our yellow is for cylinder 4, and our blue is for cylinder 1. So you can see we have the request for ignition, and then blue is pretty much the acknowledgement of yes, we had ignition. So now we have our spacing here between when it actually happens versus when the feedback happens, and that is around 21 milliseconds that happens.
So I check on all data. I check several vehicles for the ignition timing, and they don't have ignition timing procedures in all data, because you can't really change or measure the ignition timing because they are all controlled by the PCM or the ignition module. And if you want to measure or really changing the ignition timing, you can do it on the distributor ones. And I also found the 2006 Toyota Corolla. It have the procedure for the ignition timing, but it just measure the timing. You can't change it. So you can use a scan tool to connect to the data link connector to check the ignition timing. And the ignition time is 8 to 12 before top data center. And also have Another procedure when not using a scan tool, you use the SST. This is a special service tool to check the ignition timing. You connect terminals 13 and 4 of the data link connector. You can see the 8 to 12 before top data center at idle, and you disconnect the terminals. You change the ignition time in 10 to 18 before top data center at idle.